I don't remember much from my childhood, but what I do remember still haunts me to this day. My parents found me in the back of an abandoned truck one day, and feeling sad that I was just left there by my biological parents, they took me in. They called me a miracle baby. They found me when they had been trying and failing to have kids for over a decade. But the good times didn't last long. They named me Cal, after the gas station near where they found the truck. Soon after I turned 4, Mom and Dad finally had their own baby, and from that day forward, I was left to the wayside. I was no longer the miracle baby. I became Bad Luck Cal. Every time something bad would happen, it was my fault. Every time Dad would lose at the casino or Mom would not win the lotto, it was my fault. When my younger sister botched her piano recital, it was my fault. Usually it's siblings who would tease their siblings that they're adopted. In my case, it was Mom and Dad who would always hang that fact over my head. They would remind me every day that I was nothing to them.
Every day you eat the food off my table and you do nothing useful. You should start looking for a job. You're 16 now. You should be bringing home money.
We fed you and clothed you, and you have a roof over your head. It's a disgrace that you have never paid us back. But I was trying. I did all the chores in the house. Mom never had to lift a finger. Whenever Dad's car would break down, I would fix it for him. I cooked, I washed the dishes, I did the laundry. Every day, 24 hours a day, I took care of them. But when Mom and Dad told me to get a job, I just bowed my head and did what they said. I went to high school and also worked 2 jobs. I spent so much time working that I failed my classes and I got held back. They yelled at me for that. One night, they told me they were just going out to celebrate my sister's birthday. They didn't invite me to celebrate with them. So, I just did my chores as usual. I waited up for them, made sure their beds were newly made and the pillows were fluffed and the sheets were fresh. I waited till midnight. Then, 2 in the morning. It was 5 a.m. when I realized something was wrong. I tried calling them, and they didn't pick up. I stayed in the house for the next 2 days. I didn't leave in case they came back. On the 3rd day, I was dozing off on the couch, having been sleepless for days, when I heard the lock on the door turn. I stood up, all smiles, ready to welcome my family back. Only, the person at the door was an old woman I had never seen before. Who are you? Why do you have keys to our house? Your house? Yes? This is my mom and dad's house. You mean Mr. and Mrs. Ansel? Yes. What's happening? They never told me there was somebody here. Still, I'm the real estate agent. They've put up this house for sale. My world began to crumble. My family left. Without me. They had already put the house up for sale, and I had no idea I had been abandoned. They never really officially adopted me. So, I was left there. Alone. Homeless. For weeks, I just wandered the streets, doing whatever job I could do. Until one day, one kind soul hired me to be a waiter at a diner. It was there that I began an unusual friendship with this lady who went there a lot. It was close to where my mom and dad found me. Mrs. Thatch was always alone, but she would always order 2 cups of coffee. The other one she never drank. It's for my husband, you see. We would always come here when we were younger. We were very poor back then. But just when we hit it big, my husband went on to the next life. I still miss him every day. I kept Mrs. Thatch company whenever she would visit. I made sure she was well looked after. She would sometimes stay past our closing time, and I would stay with her. We would talk and share stories from our lives. I learned that Mrs. Thatch and her husband used to live in our town. They used to be musicians, but they never had much money. And so one day, They left our small town in search of a better life. And then they found it. Their songs got picked up by a major label, and they began to write songs for the bigger artists. They had many, many hit songs, and money rained down on them. And as quickly as their happiness began, it ended when Mrs. Thatch lost Mr. Thatch. She says she has a mansion with 25 rooms and she only uses one. It's why I come here all the time. I miss this place. I miss how happy we were. Now I have everything I ever dreamed of, but it feels empty and too big for just me. When Mrs. Thatch found out that I was sleeping in the diner's kitchen, she insisted that I go live in one of the rooms in her mansion. I declined many, many times. I didn't want to be that guy. But she was very persistent, and when she told me she would stop visiting the diner if I didn't at least come see the room for myself, I finally gave in. But what I found at that house was more than just a spare room for me. When Mrs. Thatch showed me into the mansion and up into the room she wanted me to stay in, I saw my life. The walls had photos of me as a baby, the truck I was found in, the gas station, Mrs. Thatch and Mr. Thatch holding me when I was still a newborn, in the same blanket I was found wrapped in. I knew it instantly. I knew because I spent many, many days holding that same blanket and staring at the photo of the truck Mom and Dad found me in. I turned around with tears running down my cheeks, and Mrs. Thatch, too, was crying. I knew it was you the moment I saw you. You looked exactly like your father. I was just so scared to tell you. I was so scared you would hate me. You would hate us for leaving you. I'm so sorry. We were young. We were stupid. We didn't know what to do. We had nothing. We could barely afford to feed ourselves. We thought a family who had more than we did might have been able to give you a better life. I'm so sorry. We failed you. I'm so sorry, my son. Mrs. Thatch broke down, and I held her and I cried into her shoulder. I would never hurt you. It's not your fault. I'm just glad. I'm so happy I found you, Mom. From that moment on, my life truly began. I was finally home, where I truly belonged. Mom and I started catching up on all the years we missed in each other's lives. She took me to the places where she and Dad went. She introduced me to the people she knew, and I got to listen to the songs that changed their lives. But all good things come to an end, because only a few months later, I lost my mom for the second time. She left me everything. The mansion, the money, all of it. At the cemetery, I saw a bunch of faces I thought I'd never see again. Oh my God! It's been so long, my son!
We've been looking all over for you. We heard what happened. So sorry for your loss. But we are so happy you found your parents. My adoptive mom and dad told me this fanciful story about them going on a trip and being stranded somewhere. When they came back to the house, I was gone. I never believed a single word of it. I know what really happened. I'm so sorry to ask you this, my most beloved son, but your father and we're homeless. Your sister has lost her scholarship and we've lost everything. We were hoping, since you live in that massive place, could you perhaps spare us a room or two? We'll clean and cook or whatever. Your sister is a great cook.
I smiled. You don't have to do all that. Of course you're welcome at my home. Honestly, I had bad vibes, but I welcomed them. I let them have a room each, but the nice attitudes and smiles didn't last long. Their true colors shone once again. On the third day, I came home from work to find my adoptive dad lounging by the pool, my adoptive mom drinking smoothies while watching TV, and my sister, Trixie, kissing some boy in the garage. The house was a complete mess. The kitchen was trashed. I just smiled and started to clean up while they didn't bother to greet me. That night, I overheard them talking, and I found out they weren't homeless after all. They were just pretending so they could live off of me, and so they could live in a mansion. The very next day, I called my lawyer, and then I gathered my family. You know what, son? Technically, you and Trixie aren't really related. You're single. She's, soon to be single. Why don't you two get married? That way we can protect your fortune. It all stays in the family. Mom! That's a bit extreme, Mom.
I mean, you already have a lawyer here. Why not marry her now? Only a judge can marry people. I'm a lawyer.
Mom, Dad, it's kind of gross. I get what you're saying, but I have a better idea. And that's why my lawyer is here. Now that we found each other again, and I've come into this great fortune, I thought I should take care of you like the way you took care of me when I was a child. I want to leave all of this to you, should anything happen to me. I saw their eyes light up. They all lined up to sign immediately, not even reading a single word of what the paper said. My mistake. This wasn't the paper I was telling you about. This was a contract, binding all of you into being my servants for as long as I want you to be. I'm sorry I lied. Well, not exactly. I did tell you I was going to take care of you the way you took care of me when I was a kid. So, now, go on. Do your chores. Mom, clean the kitchen. Dad, make the dinner. Trixie, go wash my clothes. They all stood there with their mouths ajar, until my lawyer clapped his hands and ordered them to scatter.
You heard your boss. Chop chop.
And that's how I turned the people who abandoned me into my servants.